Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk About Christianity. I'm Zach. This is Keith and Pablo, my co-hosts.
Morning.
My co-hosts.
Buenos
And
días.
we've got a guest. We've got a special guest today on the program. Matt, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Wallin. I work with House to House, Heart to Heart, and I'm also a deacon at the Oak Hill Church of Christ in Rome, Georgia.
That was Zach's way of saying he couldn't remember your name. So, hey, special guest, introduce yourself.
Smart.
I knew your name, Matt. I knew your name, Matt Wallin. Matt Wallin from Rome,
Smart
Georgia. Don't let
smart
Keith fool you.
move.
Yeah.
But Matt, we're so glad that you have joined us today. I know that you work with House to House and Heart to Heart, and the way you came to be on the program from our end this morning. We know that Polishing the Pulpit is coming up, and that in conjunction with that, the idea has been presented of a nationwide door knocking day. And so we wanted to get more information about that. And so I texted Alan Webster, and I said, hey, Alan, would you or someone from Polishing the Pulpit be willing to come on the program? And he just texted back and said, Matt. And so it's like, I'm not messing with this one. I'm going to get the expert on this one. And so
you got volunteered to come to the program today.
Yep, voluntold. I have that happen a lot. Yep.
A lot of decisions are being made for you, Matt.
Yep, that's true.
A lot of decisions are being made for you.
And I'm fine with that.
Sounds like you've got experience there.
That's right.
But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your role with the Jacksonville church. I guess I'll put it that way, because I know you do a lot with House to House. You and I have communicated about House to House before, but you do more.
Yeah, that's right. So I started out about almost 14 years ago working with House to House. It was basically my second job out of college. And I love it because it's kingdom work. It's ministry things that are going to have eternal consequences. But I also love the business world. And so I get to use some of those ideas and some of those principles as we deal with printers and then even as we deal with congregations. And so for me, it's kind of a perfect mix of the two things that I love, ministry and doing business type things. So with House to House, when I started working here about 14 years ago, I was kind of like the liaison. So I would talk to the Keith at every congregation. And if they wanted to improve the ways they were sending it out, if they wanted help with follow-up, if they wanted to switch to some new areas, if they wanted to advertise a gospel meeting, then all of that went through me. And so I would get probably 100, 150 emails a day. And that's including like Saturday and Sunday, getting about that thing too. So it's just a lot of it wasn't hard, but it was so much of it. You had to be a meticulous record keeper. You had to really care about it or things would fall through the cracks. And so I did that for probably about 9 years, 10 years, something like that. And then I was telling a couple of you guys when you first got on, my wife and I, we were in Jacksonville for 10 years. And then we found out we were having twins. And we are from Rome, which is about an hour from Jacksonville. And my wife basically told me, I'm going to Rome to be around my parents and get help with the kids. And if you want to come with us, we'd love to have you. And I told the elders, as the head of my house, I've decided we're moving to be close to family. And so the elders were gracious enough and knew my work ethic and stuff. And so, you can work from home some and you can commute to the office some. And then last year, a tornado destroyed the Jacksonville office. So the House to House office, the PTP office, just ripped the roof off and rained down on it for a few hours. And so now if you go, there's not even a brick or a paperclip left where the building used to be. And so now all of us work from home. Alan works from home. Our secretaries work from home. And so I was just kind of an early implementer on that. But when I moved to Rome, I switched. So now what I do is kind of promotions. And I'll listen to what churches need and see if we can provide it. And I'll go speak at lectureships about House to House and stuff. And so we basically have grown word of mouth. So we started with one church doing House to House. And then we now have had about 4,000 congregations use it. And so most of that growth until the last 4 years has been basically word of mouth. And when I moved, I started going around to tell people what we did and how we could help them and listen to what they needed. So now as an example, since I've moved over to this role, and this wasn't just me, of course, but we provide websites for free for congregations if they do House to House, even one issue a year. And so we currently maintain about 400 websites for churches for free, just as part of the program. We started something called New Movers, where as soon as someone moves into your community, they'll get a copy of House to House, and 2 weeks later, they'll get a postcard from you. And then 2 weeks later, you'll get their first and last name and address if you want to visit them or send them a letter. And so here at Oak Hill, we do New Movers, and we've had a conversion from that. And so just things like that, trying to let churches know how we can help, and then listen and make the program better and more beneficial for them. So that's what I'm doing currently.
If you're unfamiliar with House to House, Heart to Heart, you definitely need to check them out. House to House, heart-to-heart.com. They've got all kinds of great material. I mean, fantastic material. And I often will use it in our bulletin here at Paintsville, some of the articles that various people have written. You know, Alan Webster's phenomenal. Alan Webster is, if I had to say who the best writer in the Brotherhood would be, I would probably gravitate towards Alan Webster. He is a fantastic writer, and you guys are doing some great work down there, and it's making a lot of progress, and it's making a meaningful difference.
Yeah, and I'll say about 2 years ago, I got a little discouraged because I didn't feel like we were hearing back as many conversions or visitors. But in the past year and a half, we've gotten more feedback from churches like, hey, we had a baptism, we've had visitors, we've had a restoration, than we've gotten maybe like the whole 14 years I've been working here. So I don't know. Yep. I don't know what the reason for that is, if it's the political environment or the community church movement. People are looking for something more concrete. But whatever it is, it's being really successful and working really well right now.
Okay, I actually sort of have a plan here in my mind anyway, and which is hopefully going to bring us.
You have a plan, but you just haven't shared it.
Well, hopefully it's going to bring us full circle here in a moment. But so let's talk about this nationwide door knocking day. You know, you obviously and the church there at Jacksonville have been involved in print ministry, if we can call it that, for a long time now. I can't even remember when it got started. I know it was
1994.
Yeah, I was going to say it was in the mid '90s, but a long time. Why door knocking, and why now?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things. One, we want to be better at evangelism, period, and teaching people and helping people. We just found out we'd have so many churches do house to house. And so in case you don't know what house to house is, we basically produce a magazine, and then we customize the front and back for the local church. So when Paintsville sends it out, Sykeston gets it. They don't know anything about Jacksonville. They don't know who I am. They don't know about house to house. They just know the local Church of Christ is reaching out to them, inviting them, teaching them. And so that's what we do. So we'll have churches sometimes, to our shame, call and say, hey, we had a Bible study request. Well, oh, that's great. And they're like, well, we don't really know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. And so we noticed that more times than we care to admit, probably. And so we've been looking for a guy, basically since I got here. It's something I wanted to do, is bring on a guy that would go around and teach churches how to teach the lost. And I don't know if you know Rob Whitaker or not, but Rob was doing that to an extent throughout his, he had a local full-time pulpit work, but he was doing that on the side. And so we thought he would be the perfect person for it. He used house to house effectively anyway. He would have one issue a year delivered to him, and then his congregation would go and knock the doors that they usually mailed it to and hand deliver it. And they every time would have conversions from that. So he's just a guy that doesn't just preach evangelism in theory, but he actually does it. You know, he's an expert, if you could say that, on the subject. And so we hired Rob to come on board and to go around and to do his seminars, but blow them up, make them bigger, invite local. It's not just for Paintsville. It's for everybody within an hour of Paintsville. And you're welcome to come. You need to come. Bring your soul winners and potential soul winners. And so Rob has done that. And every time he goes somewhere at seminars, the congregations are on fire. They've learned how to teach people. And they're calling us and emailing us pictures of the baptistry full of, the water overflowing because there's just been a baptism and things like that. And so Rob has really helped us with that. And another thing in that, the other part of it is kind of, you could say luck or providence as far as the door knocking thing is concerned. I got on Facebook one night. It was a Saturday right before I went to bed. And I saw that two guys that I'm friends with who didn't know each other, different parts of the country. Stephen Hill, he is at the Sullivan Village Church of Christ in Lawton, Oklahoma. And then Kerry Gillis, who is at Bridge Avenue in Walesko, Texas. But they posted something very similar. They said, hey, look, here's us with our congregation. We've gone door knocking today. And church, I'm here to tell you, nobody's doing this, like really denominations or anything else. No businesses do this anymore. And yeah, it's a little awkward. And yeah, some people think it's outdated. But I'm telling you, people are responding to this. And if we'll get out and do it, people will respond to it. And so when I saw that, I said, man, these two guys, they don't know each other. It popped up back to back on my feed. And it really just got me thinking. I have always wanted to do something in a bigger way with all the brotherhood works. But that's tough, because what are you going to find? You know, some things that you pick are, people say, well, that's great, good luck, but that's out of my wheelhouse. I have no interest in it. Some things people would say, well, there might be some controversy about that. I don't want to be a part of that. And so you got to find something that is effective, but also, you know, tame enough that you're not going to exclude anybody that should be a part of it. And so when I saw this with door knocking, I thought, you know, we all believe in that to an extent. We've all seen the successes of that, and it's something we could probably all get behind. And so I just started asking around. You know, I called Rudy Kane with World Video Bible School and Don Blackwell with GBN, and, you know, so on and so forth, and pitched the idea to them. And I said, this isn't a house-to-house thing. Now I'm going to get the ball rolling, and we'll put a little money into it and put the time into it. But it's not about us. It's not a commercial for us. We're not putting our logo on anything. We don't want anybody even necessarily to know we're the ones that got it started. You take this and you make it yours. So when you post it on Facebook, when you email blast your people, don't mention us. Say, hey, you're going to go door knocking. Don't go empty-handed. Take these great materials from World Video Bible School and make it your own. And so people really have it. And so that's why you think, you know, thought at the outset, well, this is a polishing the pulpit thing. Well, it's really not. It's more of a house-to-house thing. But it worked well because Polishing the Pulpit has made it their own. Apologetic Express has made it their own. You know, Freed Hardeman made it their own. And so everybody that sees it, they say, oh, well, my friends that I trust, my brand that I trust is the one that got this started. And that's exactly how we want it to be. We just want the message to go out, people to buy into it, and we all do something together on the same day. And so that's kind of where the idea came from.
I'm scrolling through Facebook the other day, and the first person I see post about it, it wasn't you guys. It was actually Apologetic Express. It was Kyle. But he shared it and posted about it. And I thought Apologetic Express was the one who came up with it, but I guess I was
awesome.
wrong.
No, great.
So,
that's exactly what we wanted.
There we go.
Yeah, good.
Everything's going perfectly for you.
Good.
Well, I love that it is by design selfless, I guess you would say. That, you know, the desire is that everyone that will participate will make it their own. And I know here at Shady Acres, we have already begun making plans for that day, and
Great.
we're going to make it our own, and we're working toward that already. And you know, you look at what is October the 5th is the day that has been selected. We had the Southeast Missouri Leadership Workshop here on this past Monday morning, and I brought it up, and I was kind of surprised that none of the other guys there had heard of it yet, but they were all excited to hear about it and wanted to know more. And so, of course, I said, listen to the podcast on Wednesday, you know, because I knew that we were planning to do this. So and you talk about door knocking. To me, it's interesting that you came across these two guys who were talking about the success that they have had from it, when all that we hear, and I'm not going to say all, I'm using that as a generalization, but, you know, so often we hear, well, you know, that may have worked 20, 30, 40 years ago, but it just doesn't work in our day and time today. And it's, you know, I have found that things that you don't use don't work.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jerry Jenkins used to say, I like the way I do it better than the way you don't do it. And I think that's a similar idea.
Now, Pablo is, of course, in a little different situation than we are. But, Pablo, you probably have more experience door knocking than all of us put together.
But I have a question about it. What kind of tracks or materials do you give when you go and door knocking in that area?
Yeah, great question.
What are the topics
really
that you
question.
use on the tracks?
Yeah. So we haven't done this yet, so I'm going to lead into answering that, okay? Give a little background. We're going to start sending out emails to people who have signed up probably every other week with some tips. And so I could give some tips about door knocking, but I have done it not that much in my life, just a little. But I'm not going to be the one giving the tips. We're asking Rob Whitaker. We're asking David Shannon. We're asking Kyle Massengale. We're asking people that are experts at it. They've done it, as much as you, I'm sure. And so they'll be the one giving tips. Then another thing we're going to do is we're going to send out something that says, here is a nice, beautiful, free resource from House to House that we've created that you can use, and you don't have to spend a dime on this. But if you want to, here's one thing from House to House, here's one thing from Apologetics Press, one thing from World Video Bible School, and we're going to let all of those Brotherhood works suggest the one thing they think would be best. And so we'll have several that you can choose from that comes out in the email. And so we'll give some suggestions. But we're going to say a couple of things. We're going to say, one, I really think the value is just in getting out and meeting your neighbors. It may be that the only thing you do the entire time is to let people know about the church that's close to them and be friendly to them. And obviously that's not enough at the end of the day, at the end of time, but that's going to plant a seed. That's going to build a bridge. And if we don't know our neighbors, we can't take the gospel to people that we never meet. And so that's just step one. We just want to go meet them. We want to be a good neighbor. We want to say, how can we help you? And so some people probably are going to door knock, and at the door, they're going to say, hey, we want to have a Bible study. Hey, will you read this house to house? And that's fine. And we're going to give some tips along those lines. But mainly what I think we're going to promote the most is, and this is what Sojourners does. Are y'all familiar with Sojourners out of Texas?
Yes.
They'll show up at a congregation and help them with whatever they need. But in their door knocking campaigns, they'll knock on the door and say, hey, we're from so-and-so church. We just want to pray with you. So do you have anybody in the military, any family that's sick, anybody going off to school, or, any spiritual stuff you've been wrestling with? We just want to pray with you. And so they'll take those prayer requests, they'll pray with them. And then at the end, Sojourners will say, well, hey, can I ask you a question? And now you've turned this defensiveness, because I don't want people coming to my door and I'm defensive. You turn this awkwardness, this defensiveness into a warmth. And so then the person will almost always say, well, yeah, sure, go ahead and ask. And then the person will say, well, if you died right now, or if Jesus came back right now, do you know for sure that you would go to heaven? And then you can gauge and have a conversation based off what the person says. And so what we're, I think, going to promote the most and suggest is, don't try to get the Bible study at the door per se, but first just try to pray with the people, get to know them, and then that might be able to lead into something a little further. So that's what we're going to suggest. So we think it's good to leave something, and we will encourage somebody to leave something, because I've heard, now that I've got this door knocking conversation going, several people have said, oh, I was converted through it, or we converted somebody who wasn't even home, or said, no, get out of my face, but they took our pamphlet and they called us a week later, they called us a month later. And so we definitely want to encourage leaving something, because you never know what it'll do behind the closed door that it couldn't do on the porch. But basically, we're not pushing any one thing or promoting any one thing to leave. We're giving several options that we feel will be good, and there will be different options.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. I've had a couple experiences lately door knocking. We had an event called Oath, and it stood for our Ascent to Heaven. We did a door knocking campaign for that event in our community, and we had some different responses. The first door I knocked on that day, first door, God told me to get off of his porch or he was going to send his dogs at me. And so that was my first experience. But then after that, it became a lot better, and it was a lot more comfortable, and so on and so forth. But it's been my experience in Peru that door knocking campaigns do work. Now, they may not work as effectively here in America and at home than they do abroad, but they still work, and they still need to be done. And it's an old-fashioned way of doing things, but it's an effective way of doing things. And everybody needs to look into doing this door knocking day that you guys are promoting. Every congregation in the United States should be doing it. Even in Peru, Pablo, everybody should be doing it.
So. Yeah, maybe next year we can go for worldwide, Matt.
Yeah, and we kind of pitched it that way. I mean, I did get the message out overseas, and so like World Bible School, World Video Bible School, and us, we have a lot of churches we worked with overseas. So we do have already about 15 or 20 countries signed up in addition to the States.
Fantastic.
So we set a goal for 200, and you always want to shoot a little lower than you think you can get, because you'd rather say 200 and have 300 than say 500 and only have 100. So anyway, we said 200 at first, and we've already got 375 churches signed up. And I don't know about Shady Acres, but so far I go to Oak Hill, Alan Webster and Rob obviously go to Jacksonville, and then one of my coworkers, Luke, goes to Heflin. Well, those three congregations haven't signed up yet. Well, why? Well, because we're talking with our eldership, seeing the best plan before we sign up. And I think but we're going to do it, but I don't want to just sign my congregation up without complete buy-in, and so I'm waiting. So the fact that we have 375 so far, I think most churches are in the same boat as us. They're still talking about it. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get somewhere between 500 and 1,000 congregations we'll have a church in every state, and we'll have maybe as many as 30 to 40 foreign countries as well.
Okay, so you, like we've said, you work with House to House, which is an evangelistic print ministry. So pretty much everything you do is evangelistically minded. How can we encourage those who are around us to think more about evangelism?
Yeah, great question. And that is part of what we have to do too, because sometimes a church will sign up to do house to house, and that's all they want to do is send it out, and they think that that's the answer. But it will never work that way. We've had churches mail it out, and after one mailing, they've had 2 baptisms. That's a rare case. That's the exception. That's not the rule. So we have to get churches to not think of evangelism as an event. And I know we're creating this event, so that might be kind of ironic to say that. But you've got to look at it as it's a lifestyle. It becomes part of who you are everywhere you go. And I think it's Jerry Jenkins again. He used to say, somebody said this. We'll give him credit. He's a good guy. He can have
just quote him twice.
But he said he was either in a study, trying to get in a study, or he had just gotten out of one. And if you're a preacher and you're not doing that, and I think David Shannon said something similar, then get out. If you're not doing one of those, looking to get in a study, you're in a study, or you just got out, then what are you in ministry for? And, that's kind of shocking to us because we don't really think that way. But we've got to get back to where we think that way. If a preacher didn't do the bulletin, he might get killed. But if he didn't have a Bible study, no one would necessarily know, and it wouldn't come up. So we got to get people to stop thinking it's in a program. It's an event. Well, it's not. It's really a lifestyle. And if you have several soul winners that look at it that way, you'll grow and grow. So that's what we got to do is get churches to see past just the event. And, we're doing this as an event, but we want it to become something bigger, more frequent, and kind of a way of thinking.
Fantastic. It's good.
Okay, so I'll throw out another question. Seems like I'm asking all the questions. But,
Keith's got all the questions.
So evangelism is active as opposed to passive. Now, I realize that, when you start talking about active and passive, that a print evangelism is more passive than active. But the Great Commission is active. Jesus said, go. And this is my opinion from my observations, but it seems to me with the environment in our world, in our culture today, that many Christians they feel as though they are on the defensive. And it's hard to be active in evangelizing when you feel defensive. So how do we encourage Christians to maybe we need to try to get Rob Whitaker on here and talk about this or something. But he might be a great addition here in a couple of weeks. But how do we? I'm trying to figure out how to word this. How do we evangelize actively without shifting from a defensive position to an aggressive position? Because the last thing we want to do, and you touched on this a few moments ago, but the last thing we want to do is put someone else on the defensive. Does that make sense at all?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Rob would be great because a lot of things that I'll say in theory or that I've noticed from him or others, I have limited experience on, whereas he has tons of experience on it. So he'd be a good guy to bring on. But one thing is, Hiram Kemp did a really good sermon one time, and he talked about the Jesus that turned over tables. That's some people's favorite Jesus, but they love the one that turned over the tables, but they don't realize that you back up just a little bit and Jesus has just wept over the city. And so the point Hiram made is don't turn tables over in a city that you haven't wept over. And so we cannot separate our call to take the gospel to people with our commandment to be tactful, to let our speech be seasoned with salt, to do everything out of a motivation of love. And it is easy when you're getting punches in the face by people online or getting doors shut in your face to turn around and be defensive, to put your fists up. But that's part of turning the other cheek. I can get insulted door after door, and the next door is not even going to know it happened. And so that's part of it, is just remind ourselves why we're doing it. Let every motivation we have be covered in love, And we're just telling people about Jesus. If we're rejected, it's not us that's being rejected. Ultimately, they're just rejecting the message. And, how sad would it be if people aren't rejecting Jesus? They're rejecting the way we bring it to them or the way we present them. And so it's tough when people are being aggressive, but you have to just bathe everything you do in tact and love. And that will be a big part of it, I think, too.
Go ahead, Keith.
One of my new favorite sayings is, you can win the argument and lose the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And don't win the argument but lose the soul. So Pablo, what?
Yes, Matt, it's very interesting about door knocking. In the States, when you go to a door, it's more like invitation for the church or the presentation of the gospel, or both.
Yeah, I think it can be any. I've known a lot of people that have door knocked and said, hey, will you come to our congregation? Will you come to our gospel meeting? And I still think that's better than doing nothing. But by and large, I've heard people say that has not worked very well. We have not seen very many people show up from that.
Right.
That's why maybe the approach of let's pray with you and leave something with you people have said that that's more effective. Andrew Itzen is with the Robertsdale Church of Christ and close to Gulf Shores in Alabama. And that's what they do. They call it a prayer walk. And then, like I mentioned, that's what Sojourners does. Sojourners did a campaign up here in Somerville, Georgia, where Robbie Eversole is the preacher at Penville, and they had 9 baptisms from it. And
Wow.
they didn't say, hey, come to church with us, but they prayed with people. And then they asked that question I mentioned earlier, do you know where you would go if Jesus came back now? If they say yes, oh, great, can you tell me about that? If they say no, say, well, hey, look, I could study with you and show you in 30 minutes, and you would know for sure one way or the other. And that's how they had success from it. So I think even if you just go out and say, hey, will you come to our church? It is better than doing nothing, but there are better ways to do it. And I think the better way to do it would be to pray with people, actually pray for them and help them, ask what you can do for them, make a friend, leave some stuff with them, maybe try to follow up later. Because it's not just a one-time thing and you're done. You want to follow up with these people. Maybe send them a card that says, hey, we're still praying for Billy in the Army. We're still praying for your aunt, and we're your friends if you need anything. And to me, from talking to people, that approach has gotten more results than just, hey, will you come to church with us?
Good.
Keith, what's our time check?
We're about out of time. We got to get this wrapped up. Little business to take care of, I guess. This is episode number 102. And, you certainly, we encourage you to share the word. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the program with us today. And
it was an honor.
I want to say we've got a special guest lined up for next week that is, will be a little bit different topic than this. That is for sure. But I'm very interested in seeing if we can get Rob to come on the program with us. And so, Matt, stick around when we hang up here, and I want to get some contact information from him or for him, and we'll see if we can get that arranged.
Okay.
Any final thoughts from anyone?
Get out and go knock on some doors.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and we've got we blitzed it on social media, the announcement, but we've got a postcard coming out to every church in the country. It should be hitting into this week, beginning of next. And then we have an ad in every Brotherhood publication as well about it. So, yeah, but like Keith did, help us get the word out. It doesn't cost anything to sign up with this. As a matter of fact, we'll give you some free resources. And we just want to get out and meet our neighbors. We want to be the best neighbor in the community. And that's part of what this day is about, starting to do that if we're not already.
I don't know how to say that any better. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Matt, again, thank you for being with us. Zach, you made it on time today because we were running late.
I had time to sleep in maybe a little bit and get some Arby's. Man, it was fantastic. I like this. Can we start going at 10 every day?
Pablo, are you at home today?
I'm home today.
Wow.
Yes.
No, not on vacation.
No more. No.
Yeah, Matt
no more
probably
trips.
doesn't know, but Pablo's been on vacation 3 out of the last 4 weeks. So
He likes to take vacations.
yeah.
Nice. Smart man.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. We got to get out of here. We'll see you next week.
Adios.